Okay, with great pleasure, I would like to introduce David Kohler. David's been woodworking. There's no X on the floor. Who forgot that? Okay, David's been woodworking for 45 years. He's been turning for 5, and then he got smart and started segment turning. So he's been doing that for about a year now. Him and his wife moved up here from the Phoenix area about 9 months ago. They lived in that area for 33 years. So with no further delay, I'd like to introduce David Kohler, and this should be very interesting. I've been looking forward to it. So here we go.
Everybody. Thank you. Well, first of all, I haven't been turning for a year. I've been doing segmenting for about 4 years. Sorry, we got miscommunication there.
I got bad information.
Yeah,
From you.
from me. So when I was thinking about doing this demo, I was really pondering over what I should do. So I thought I would start with why I do it. Not that maybe anybody cares, but that's where I'm going to start. And then do some basics in case people are interested but have never done it. And then I'll go to some how to do it. You're talking about the how do you figure out the size of the rings? I'll tell you how to do that, both with a computer and without a computer. And I've got some handouts that will help you with that too, and a drawing to show you. Then I'm going to go into some maybe more advanced features and what you can do once you get into it and decide you want to continue. So first thing is, who's done segmenting? Who hasn't? Who doesn't care? Or you can leave. Oh, wait, that's my wife. She's got the keys too. So the reason I got into it is because I was doing turning years ago. I had a lathe and it was absolutely awful. Didn't know how to do anything. So I sold the lathe and gave it up. Then a few years ago, my grandson saw somebody making pins on Facebook or YouTube or whatever. So he asked me if we could do it. So I bought a little grizzly lathe. Please excuse me, but that's how I got started. Then we started doing bowls. These are actually some of the first bowls I did before I knew how to finish the bottom. I thought, well, I'll just stick a cork over the holes. So this was one my mother actually liked, but the inside is terrible, the big gaps. And so these are kind of what I call my hermits. I stick them back in a dark corner and they never see the light of day again. But I saw, what's his name, Ray Allen's work one time, and I thought, oh, that's really fascinating. So after I was doing bowls out of solid wood, I thought, well, I'm going to try segmenting. And Malcolm Tibbet says, when you do segmenting, the number one thing you should do is concentrate on form. So that's why I do a lot of work that I copy from Native American pieces. I have some Greek pieces I do, but it's the color and the form that really intrigues me. And there's just a plain piece of wood, but then I can do things like this. This is actually part of a kind of a modified Greek key, if you know what that is. I can vary my colors with the woods. Another hermit, those in the wrong order. And then you can do feature rings out of, okay. All right, I'll pass those around. And then you can do feature rings. You may have seen Thunderbirds like this. So that's how it starts. And then you cut strips off of this. These are 1/8" strips. Some people use 1/4 inch, some use wider ones, but this gives you the ability to do things like this and what's called the Indian blanket. It's another way of rearranging these. I can do a glue up like this. Cut them, glue them together like this, then like this, and I get my zigzags. If I'm lazy and really want to do that, don't want to do that, I'll cut them this way and put them and get arrows going around the rim of a bowl. These are same thing, just different styles. This one is going to be cut differently and then rearranged differently, so it'll be totally different. But it's just another way of using the woods. You've probably all seen the samples of the woods here: Purple Heart, Bloodwood, Yellow Heart. That's cherry, zebrawood, maple. I also use babinga, and if you're familiar with Murado, that's a beautiful wood. I don't have a piece of it. And then for color, I use a lot of Spectra ply. If you're not familiar with this, this is made similar to plywood, only a company in Maine cuts the veneers, dyes them, and then presses them together into sheets. The grain all runs the same direction as opposite of plywood. Plywood would, runs counter across grain. This is available in about anywhere from, I think, 1/4 inch thickness up to 2.5, and in about probably 50 different color combinations. This is another color. Arranging this in different ways gives you different looks. When I cut this one, if it's going to be on the outside of the circle or outside of the curve, this will look like eyeballs, similar to this right here. If I take and cut this way, where I'm cutting into this face, this is going to give me kind of a chevron look, and I don't think I brought a sample of that. But, oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, right there. That's the look it's going to give me. And if you're going to be at the demo at Rick's house on
What's the cost on that?
a 9-inch wide by 40-inch sheet's about $75, 3/4 inch thick.
Right.
And it takes about at least 4 to 6 weeks to get it. The last piece I got in April, and I had ordered it in January, so it does take a while sometimes. But it gives you, I mean, it's just so versatile, different colors and combinations, what you can do with it. The piece I'm going to turn at Rick's on Tuesday is taking a piece of the Spectra ply, gluing it to a piece of, in this case, wingay, and then I'll turn it this way. I'll cut the segments so that the segments are like this. Whoops, not like that. Because if I turn this, the Spectra ply is going to be on the outside, but I want the wingay on the outside. So what that's going to do is give me a picture like, oh, can you bring up the pictures? And I think there's one called Deception. Here they are right there in front of me. So I bought these from Jerry Bennett in Texas, and they work great. But as much as I do, I didn't want to take the time to constantly set it up and change it. So Pete Markin makes another one like this that is drilled and pinned. So you just adjust it to where whatever segment you want.
David, when you do this bowl, did you do this in 2 halves, top and bottom?
I did. Yeah.
Okay.
You feel inside, you can feel where they came together because I didn't quite get it right. Sometimes I will try and hollow that out, but it's really. It's just pre-drilled for a number of segments. I think it goes from 10 to 144 segments. So it's much faster. I don't have to wiggle the arms around and try and get it right. So, okay, another reason I like to do segmented is, like I say, because of the color and the designs I can get in here. And you guys, a lot of you guys use the hollowing tools and you get 2 or 3 bowls out of a piece of wood. Well, there's a trick to doing this. These are 1/4 inch thick pieces. But I started by gluing up rings that are 5/8 to maybe 3/4 inch thick. When I get the rings all done, I sand them flat, then I split them and I get 2 bowls for one. So this one, not that piece count's terribly important to me, but that's about 1,200 something pieces there. And that's Peruvian walnut, bloodwood, and yellow heart and maple.
You bandsaw still?
What's that?
You bandsaw?
Yes, I have a bandsaw that I don't even want to breathe on it because it's tracking perfectly right now. I don't want to make any changes at all. Okay.
What kind of type on glue?
I use Type Bond 2, and I use Type Bond 2 for a couple of reasons. One, it's what I've always used. And the other is it's the only one that's available in 2.5 gallon size with a pump.
You know, I can only cycle through one at a time, so you tell me
Okay.
which one.
You'll see a stack of boards. There you go, right there. This is the other reason I do it, because I can go buy wood like that. And who doesn't like to go buy wood? So that's purple heart, yellow heart, bloodwood, wingy, and zebra wood.
Where you going for your wood now, David?
That came from Woodworkers Source. They do, their selection and the inventory is usually good there, but a lot of what I buy, especially maple, I use a lot of maple. The last time I bought maple, I bought 100 board feet, but I bought it from Peterman Lumber down in South Phoenix because I paid $4.60 a board foot by buying 100 board feet. And they claim they get a lot of their maple from the Wisconsin up there, the northern tier states. And it appears to be whiter. Some of the maple I get, especially at the Woodworkers Source, is Pacific Northwest maple, and it's slightly browner. It's really kind of hard to tell unless you put the two together. But Peterman has the best prices. Their selection is so spotty. You go in there sometime and they've got a huge selection of exotics. Another time you go in there, they don't have anything. But they do have really big boards. The last piece of Purple Heart I bought there was, well, I had it cut to 8 feet, but it was 11 feet long, about 14 inches wide. So it's a beautiful piece of wood. They do one there, right? One there, one in Los Angeles, I think, too. So scroll through the pictures if you don't mind. Just go one at a time through the pictures. This will show the variety of designs, shapes, colors, patterns that I can do, and that's one of the reasons I really like doing this. There's in one of the videotape or the CDs back there's some Ray Allen's work, and that's where I really got started. He's the one that inspired me to do it. I could never do his work and probably still can't, but I did get inspired by him. So these are ones I've done.
Any sequence you want.
Just start to finish should be fine. This is using Spectraply. That one right there, I have one of those right now. Spectraply and Wingy. And I tell you, I rarely repeat anything, but I've repeated that one a couple of times because I've sold 3 of them at $600 a piece. So I'm going to keep making those. This is also, I sold that one as well. That was Spectraply, but it's done in a slightly different pattern. So. And it shows on both sides. That's the one that's just on one side. That's mahogany and roasted walnut from Woodworkers Source. That one, everything gets a name. That one's called Dark and Stormy because, like I tell people, I did a internet naming contest with no prizes to call it either Dark and Stormy or Black and Tan, and Dark and Stormy one, if you're familiar with beer drinks. That's one using the feature ring made out of bloodwood, and I think I used wingy and maple on that one.
How do you stop bloodwood from bleeding into the maple?
I don't have a problem with bloodwood. I use bloodwood because I don't use Paducah anymore for that very reason. And Paduke turns dark too fast. Bloodwood will stay kind of reddish for a couple of years if it's not exposed to light. It's another one using Spectraply. You know, the lady that bought that one, she bought that one from me to show in Fountain Hill. She bought 4 of them. That's when I was really, well, I still am struggling with how to price my work. And those were, she bought 4 of them at $400 a piece, like $450 a piece. And when she was walking out of the booth, she said, "I'm a retired art dealer and you need to double your prices." Oh, come back here and give me your card again. So you just scroll through there. If I see something really interesting, I'll stop you. This one is kind of interesting. My wife and I both work on incident management teams that do wildfires. And this, on wildfires, sometimes the fire creates its own weather and you'll get a spiral of fire. Well, that's what this is copied after. So I call this one the Fire-Nado Bowl.
They call that tornado.
Fire-Nado is what they call it. And this is the same pattern on the base. That one, that's Spectraply done a different way. That's like this, only it's on the inside part of the curve. So this is what I get out of it. Because on the outside part, I get eyeballs or circles, but that's on the inside.
Okay, yeah, which is it's cutting through the different veneer.
Correct. And that piece is on the,
I think you brought that here last time you were here.
yes,
One
it's,
time you were here.
yeah, it's on a mantelpiece in a restored row house in Philadelphia right now. So,
Oh, really?
and the money's in my pocket.
I wonder if it'll survive.
I'm concerned about the humidity changes, actually. That's a piece copied after a Mexican water jar, again, using Spectraply in a different way. I do the arrows with that.
Oh, that was interesting.
And this is when I use it as a zigzag and as these circles. That's the very first, that's called a Sikyatki. That's the very first one I ever did. You can see that the points don't come down to the bottom ring very close. That was also mesquite. That's a little bit of turquoise because it had a hole in it. The one that's going around is made, the body of it is mesquite. The mesquite in that one came from down in Tubac. I don't know if there's a guy down there that's got a mill, and this particular piece of mesquite he bought out of Mexico. And the mesquite, normally you get it's full of inclusions and holes and God knows what all. That one was a piece that was 11 inches wide, an inch thick, and 8 feet long, and had one hole in it. So very unusual. So was the price, but that's beside the point. Yeah, so this is Ray Allen. If anybody's really interested in seeing some of the advanced techniques or advanced work anyway, you should check this out and look through it. Very interesting work. He used to be in galleries in Scottsdale. I don't even know if he's still around, to tell you the truth, but he did. I thought so. Yeah. Really, that long ago? Wow. Well, they deserve to be there. His work's incredible. Wow.
And this DVD is in our library, if somebody would like to check it out.
Ken, go ahead and run video 3 if you don't mind. I changed my mind. So the first video of me cutting on that sled, very tedious and slow because I had to clamp it and then pull the sled back and take the segment off. Now, using the sled that's going around here, I just set it the way I wanted, and I'm not nearly as concerned about losing a finger anymore. So I'm much more comfortable. That's a cool piece too. Um,
Does your sled have the pieces drop off to the side after you cut them?
well, the sled doesn't, but I put a little triangular piece of maple glue or double stick tape to it. I've seen people do, that's video one. Okay, this is the peat marking sled that's going around. So you can see how much faster it is.
Yeah.
And when I'm trying to get ready for a show, I don't have time to waste because I don't crank these things out in 2 a day. So it takes a while to get a decent inventory.
Yeah, well, several of us in the club have made the easy sled. And have found that this is nice also, either one.
Same, really the same.
Yeah, same idea.
Yeah.
It's a great,
Well, the big thing about this one is being able to pin it,
yeah,
so you get exactly the same, instead of trying to manually set it.
yeah.
And it's faster. And I got to stress again, for me, that's important.
Yeah.
To do it fast. It's especially important when on the rare occasion, when I screw something up and I have to go back and recut it. Never. But, and that's another reason I do this is, and sell my work is because then I can go buy more wood. That was $750 worth of wood on the picture there. And I can go buy tools, and thank goodness she supports me. My hobby never touches the household budget. So that's the whole point for me, is to make this self-sustaining. And it's more than a hobby, it's an addiction almost now. But it's that the combinations of patterns and what have you, I can do, and then I can get creative. This was going to be just a little seed jar. Well, I took it off the lathe, took it off the faceplate, and I turned it upside down. I thought, hey, why don't I make that a threaded lid? That'd be something totally different. This will be the bottom, this will be the top. So I didn't finish it because I want to use that as an example of what maybe I can do later on. Doing this getting the waves or chevrons in there, and then doing the one that I'm going to show on the two-sided bowl. That's another thing. It, to me, is a creative side I didn't really know I had. So once you get, yeah.
You said you have a handout, either electronically or here, either way is great. Is in your handout, is it where you can buy that veneer wood?
No, but I'll give you that.
Okay,
Yeah.
that would be perfect,
Okay.
because I think that
Yeah, I'd like
has struck a bunch of us segmenters.
Okay. They make what they call spectroply. They make it in blocks for turning for utilities. I mean, utensils, bottle stoppers, that kind of thing. And then they make it in the sheets, but the sheets are only 9 inches by 40, because with that grain all running in the same direction, that board has a tendency to cut. For me, it's not a big deal because I'm cutting strips off of it anyway.
David, the Spectra and a regular piece of wood, and if you have 2 pieces of wood, say wingay and maple, are you running into the issue of the fine line, the horizontal line of those? While you can't see it, you can feel the little line going around. The first bowl, you're out here, you could feel it, and that's common with whenever you laminate things together to get that. But
That's usually not a problem. The problem with that one is I took it to a show in Houston, never again. 90% humidity and 89 degrees, never again. And the wood does change. Most of what I do is here in Arizona, and I don't really have that problem, but yes, sometimes you do. I have found that if I don't let the glue cure long enough, the glue will cause that. So I usually let the glue sit overnight, at least, after it's glued up.
your tight bond glue is harder.
Hold on, let me get over there.
The tight bond glue is harder than the wood. So when you sand it, you're sanding the wood and the tight bond is staying there.
That
So-
is true. And
So
that's,
that's the reason, that's one of the reasons that you'll feel it.
and that's especially true on softer woods because the softer woods will sand easier. And sanding is, I mean, who likes sanding? Raise your hand if you like sand. All right, you guys. Yes. So
Never ever make one, because I got probably 30 hours of sanding.
And 2 bottles of Type-On.
okay, so if you would go to, oh, I'm sorry.
David, why do you use tight bond 2 as opposed to 1?
You know, honestly, it's just because that's what I've always used. I did read that, I think it's Malcolm Tibbetts recommends Type Bond 1 because it's, it dries clearer and I guess it dries faster or something, but I have 5 gallons of Type Bond 2 right now, so I'm not in any hurry to go try Type Bond 1. Although I do have a piece I'll show you here later that took 1.5 quarts of glue. Okay, so you see how I cut them, and for beginners, I think that's kind of important to see how to do that. But to somebody's point here, how do you figure out the size of those rings? If you'll bring up that, I forget what I called it. Yes, yeah, not that one, this one. So the first time I did segmenting and I wanted to make the rings, this is how I did it. Piece of graph paper and basically, well, I'll show it here, it's easier. So I drew the profile of the bowl. In this case, it was just a straight sided bowl like that brown one right there. I wanted to make it out of 3/4 inch stock. So I drew out where pieces of wood that would give me the clearance I needed all the way up. And I think I left that at like 3/8 of an inch thick, a little thick, but I was a beginner. And then I could measure my pieces off of there. And I could get, this is 1/4 inch wide and get the size of the segments all the way across there. So, but how do you get to that? There's a word a lot of us really, really hate. It's called math. So you know what the diameter of your piece needs to be. So if you multiply that by pi, 3.14, that will give you the circumference. And I learned pi like 55 years ago, and I need to go back and teach my sophomore math, or tell my sophomore math teacher, thank you for teaching me pi, but it took me 55 years to find a use for it. But so once you've got their circumference, then you divide the circumference by the number of segments you want. You want 12, you divide 29 7/8 by 12, and you get 2.5 inches for your segment length. And that's what's referred to as your segment edge length right there. Okay, well, what angle do you cut this at? You want 12 segments, so how do you get the angle on there? Circle has 360 degrees, so you divide that by the number of segments times 2, because you're going to cut that angle on both sides. So it's a 30-degree angle if you divide 12 into, or you divide the circumference by 12, you get 30 degrees, but that's 15 degrees on each side. And that gives you what you need. This one is 3.75 degrees between each one. And if you're doing 48 segments and you're 1/2 degree off, well, you've got a huge gap when you get there. So that's the purpose of using this sled right here, because it's dead accurate. Okay. So you can show that mathematical formula now. That's what I have a handout for. And this just shows you, or tells you just exactly what I talked about. Well, that circles 360 degrees, etc. And if you'll scroll down a little bit, you'll see there's free apps that help you figure out all the angles and the sizes you need for segmenting. And then there's a couple of purchased apps. My Woodturner Pro, my Segment Pro, the 3D Design and Lamination Pro. You can buy those separately or it's a bundled package. Some people like Segment Pro. I use my Woodturner Pro because it gives me what I think is a better cut list. And this is what you get when you use 3D Design Pro. This is a cut list for whatever that piece is. Okay. This is the bowl I designed. Actually, it didn't make it quite like that. I left these pieces out, but that is 38 rows of some of it's 1/4 inch thick, some of it's 3/4 inch, some of it's what did I do? 1/4 inch and 1/2 inch. So this is the program gives me this. It gives me the profile, and I can put dimensions on that. It will put dimensions up there automatically. This one I didn't do it on, but so it shows me whether I've got enough contact area between the two rings. So you can do this by hand. I'm quite frankly, I'm a retired software engineer, so I don't do it by hand. I buy software to do it. Okay, what else do we have here? Well, I've already showed a lot of the work there, but if you're really getting started, start with something small like this. This is 8 segments, and it's Home Depot pine, but it's still together, and it's not bad for a beginner piece. You can also use alder, clear alder. That's nice and soft and turns real easy. Or you can start buying the exotic woods when you get ready. And when you start turning, and I'll turn this piece here a little later now. It's going to be like that. And it will look, if I do it right, it will look like this, the same profile. It's called a Native American seed jar, but I put a feature ring on it. So you buying the exotic woods, you can do all kinds of different things. That's another example of little pieces. Yeah, this one my wife really likes, but she hasn't given me $400 yet. So, and tools are basic turning tool, bowl turning tools. What I use is I use an Irish grind. I use a negative rake scraper, and for something like this, I'll use the bottom of the bowl gouge. That's just about all I use. I don't use carbide once in a while. I've got some carbide tools, and if I were to try to turn down in here, I would maybe use the carbide, but nothing wrong with the carbide. I just got used to using the standard tools, and that's what I stick with. But everybody says this, the number one most important thing when you're doing this is keep your tools sharp, especially if you're doing open segment. I didn't bring any open segment samples, but yes, I did. I may need help with this one. That's open segment. So when you're turning open segment like that, you have to have sharp tools. You have to take small cuts. And believe it or not, when you're turning that, you have to turn it fast, because the faster you turn it, the smaller that apparent gap is, and you're less likely to get your tool caught in there. So this one's for sale also too.
What are you asking?
$4,200. And I think if I get it, I get it. If I don't, it's do I hear another bid? That's 8,400 going once. It's more anything else. It's to attract people into the booth. It's a show, a crowd stopper. I mean, I have sold a couple of large pieces, but piece I really hated to part with, I sold for $1,500, but made me feel better when I got the credit card, but I really hated to sell it. So that's the tools I use, and I'll show when I start turning this piece right here. Let's see what else. I didn't bring that other piece, but the one I'll show Tuesday at Rick's is one that is a double-sided one, and that's really cool. So I don't know how long we've been, but sure. Bruce.
I just wanted to ask a question. When you turned that one, did you turn by levels on the inside, or did you? Okay, so you would turn the bottom level, then add your opens. Yeah,
I actually built this and built this and turned them on 2 different lathes so I could, didn't have to stop. Then once I got a layer here, then I started a solid layer here. Then I started doing the open segmented pieces. When I got at least 2 layers here, then I went back and turned it. And I turned the outside to get a rough profile. Then I turned the inside to match that, and I turned and finished the inside. So this was mounted on a waist block and a face plate, and so was the bottom end here. And I got to tell you, I turned one half of it on my Powermatic 3520 and the other on the Laguna 1836. The Laguna had a little tendency to wobble, even though the points lined up perfectly. That Powermatic never wiggled at all. In fact, when I finished the last part of this, it was only attached down here, and I turned the whole thing at 1,000 RPMs with this end open on the Powermatic. So glad I bought that lathe. So anyway, that's how I do it. Turn it in 2 pieces, finish the inside, and then glue it together and finish the profile. Any other questions?
It's a steady rest.
I have 2 of them and I hate both of them, but sometimes I do, but most of the time I don't, just because I don't know, I just don't like them. They're awkward, hard to use. They don't seem to do what they're intended to do, at least not for me. It's probably me not knowing how to set them up.
So the question was, do you use a steady rest? And that's what David is addressing.
I do not.
Okay.
That's probably a safety tip or safety policy I'm violating, but that's one of the very few that I violate. You were talking about the fingerless gloves. I use the fingerless glove too, because I use a lot of wingay, and wingay splinters so bad, especially when I've got a corner like this coming at me. It splinters like crazy. And like I said earlier, if I've got 10 splinters in my hand, I can promise you 9 of them came from the wingay. So I use that, and I use this mask right here too, that I just got this recently. It's a big investment, but oh my gosh, is it worth it? I tried turning one time. I was just going to turn something real quick, and I was using this, and I wasn't paying attention, and I slipped off the end of the tool rest, and this thing went bam, 7 stitches right there. I have pictures if you want to see them. So I've always used a mask, but I've never used one quite like this. This thing is a jewel. I wish I'd found this years ago. Quiet. You can change the sheet, the cover on there. Just does a great job. Replaceable filters, or you can clean the filters, and they do a super job. Sounds gross, but one way I could tell it was working is that after I left the shop using this and blew my nose, I didn't have any wood dust on the tissue. Sorry, folks, but that's the way it is. So,
So David, how did you finish that on the lathe, or do you finish it off the lathe? And what do you use for something?
I use a couple of different finishes. A lot of what I do, I use the myelin sanding sealer. Then I put maybe 2 coats of that, then I buff that. Then I use the Mylin's friction polish on there. Then if it's, depending on what kind of shine I want on it, or if I feel like there's a little roughness on there, I have a homemade buffing wax that's beeswax, mineral oil, and 4-aught pumice that I make myself. I'll use that. And then I'll use the Staples paste wax, if you're familiar with that. It's like the Johnson's paste wax, but it's clear. You can get it in clear, you can get it in brown, you can get it in amber. So I use that. Sometimes for other pieces, especially on the inside, when I want a little shine in there, and I don't like finishing, so I do it as fast as I can do it. I use Mohawk Woodturners finish, and it dries really fast, gives a nice shine, and I'll use that for the inside of pieces that are, not going to be in contact with food or anything. This one needs another coat of oil, but when I make them, and I make these specifically for salad bowls, and I've got a larger one too, I'll use either Danish oil or tried and true. If you know what tried and true is, it's another type of salad of a bowl finish, safe for contact with food. And I've been told that just about any finish is safe for contact with food once it's dry. So, but none of my pieces, except that one and a few more like that, are intended for practical purposes. Everything else, I make it to be decorative, not utilitarian. But that's just my ego, so that's the way I do it. So, okay, so I hope anybody that wants to get started got a little information they might be able to use. And then maybe people that are familiar with doing it might get a little inspiration for some of the work I do, and maybe get creative doing some of the experimenting with your shapes and what have you. And so that'll wrap it up until I get ready to turn. Any more questions? Okay, one more thing.
David, I follow you on Facebook. And one thing I would say about you is you are prolific. And I just, do you sleep? Do you eat? How do you get so much done I just don't know how you do it.
Well, I do it a lot, obviously, but not to brag or anything, but I have my shop set up so I don't have to change setups. I have a contractor saw that I do nothing but ripping on. Then I have my big table saw that I run my jig on. I have a small band saw that I cut the circles for bottoms or waist blocks. Then I have a big band saw that I use to cut to resaw on. I have a 2550 drum sander, and I have a big planer, big joiner too. So and I have a separate garage that I have the joiner, planer, the big bandsaw, dust collector, and I store all my wood in there. So I don't have to stop and change setups, and I have a wife that's incredibly supportive. Well, I only use 3 of them. It does, it really does, because sometimes I'll glue these pieces together, glue the rings up on the lathe. Well, and people ask me, how long does it take you to make a piece? Honestly, I have no clue, because while this one's gluing up, I'm cutting the pieces for that one and I'm turning this other one. So I really don't know, but even though I sell them, I'm still probably making $2 an hour, but I don't care. So that's fine with me.
Do you cut out all your pieces at one time for a project, or do you have boxes full of pieces that you draw from?
No, I'll do the whole thing at one time, and then I throw them in bags, number the bags so I know what's what. And then I'll, like, for this one right here, I had no, that one, I forget, there's 20 something layers, so I had 20 something of these bags, but they're all numbered, and then I'll glue them up. And once they're glued up like that, that's when I run them through the drum sander and get them flat and get the sides parallel.
David, you haven't talked about how you do the glue up. What type of clamp do you use?
I use hose clamps. I use the quick release hose clamps. The most hose clamps, the screw part doesn't move except to screw in or out. The ones I use, you can flip them up and they're quick release. You don't have to screw them all the way out. And if you're interested in those, I'll give you a source for those. McMaster Cars, where I get them online. And ideas, that's a good thing too. Where do you get ideas? Well, I do a lot of.
I don't see that stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would break my heart. Actually, I've only had two pieces that ever fell. One, I had a big bowl that was just super thin. The wind blew it down. It hit the pavement and shattered like glass. And then I had another piece. It was a large Greek amphora type that opened up the truck, and apparently it had gotten out of a box. It rolled out, hit the street, and rolled across the parking lot. But I could fix it. So I do a lot of, I guess you could call it research. I look on a lot of websites that give me Native American pottery, Greek pottery, pottery from other cultures, South America. And that's kind of where I get my ideas. Also, when I first got started, I bought a book on segmented bowl turning just to get ideas for pieces. It also tells you how to do it. Some of the information I gave you came right out of here. This one also tells you how to do platters. I've done one platter in my lifetime. I'll probably do one platter. So this one is another one. When I first got started, I didn't know what I was doing really, or how to create the patterns. So I bought this book that has, I don't know, 7 or 8 different patterns in there, and it tells you how to glue them up, how to cut them. I honestly don't use that because I found it really hard to follow his directions. So now I do it my way, more or less. So, okay. One other thing, when I get ready to turn, I got to tell you this. I have never turned in front of anybody except a grandson. Never. In front of me, of her, yes, but I do like talking about it, and I'm more than happy to share what knowledge I have. And Ruth's got some of my business cards, so if anybody wants one and wants to call me directly, that's perfectly okay.
They will ask how long it takes him to make something. And I usually say he turns out at least 3 products a week. Sometimes he'll turn out 1 product, okay? Sometimes it's 5. So I say an average of 3 products a week he'll turn out.
He's in the
shop that much because he doesn't like his wife.
I thought that was our secret. These I can turn out in probably at least 3 or 4 a week. And I got to tell you, I don't like doing these. I did these because I was in a couple of galleries and they told me, oh, you need some smaller pieces, which is their way of saying cheaper pieces. So I knocked these out, sell them in the gallery for $150, but I don't like doing that. I don't want to do that. I want to do what I want to do, not what somebody's going to buy. So
That becomes a job.
it becomes a job. I'm not interested. I'm out at that point. Interesting thing is I can't sell these at $150 in a gallery, but I sell them at shows for $250. So call me crooked, or you can call me an entrepreneur. I don't care which one, but okay. So this is what I'm going to turn. And this, you were talking about whether I turned it, the whole thing at one time, or how I did it. So this is in 2 pieces. And I think, Bob, you had said that, or somebody said that I had pieces mounted on chuck jaws. I don't use the jaws. I use waste blocks and face plates. I have used it. I had a piece that was on a 4-jaw chuck, but the piece it was gripping onto was a piece of roasted walnut. And if you're familiar with the roasted walnut, it's regular American walnut, but it's put in an oven and baked to about 450 degrees, and it turns dark when the finish gets under it. This is some right here. The process apparently was originally developed to make wood more durable outdoors, because when they bake it, it bakes all the sugars out and then the bugs aren't interested. The problem is on the walnut, it gets dry and almost dusty. It's softer, and I had a piece on the jaws, and it just pulled apart. So I prefer to use the face plates and the waist blocks. Was Jack and Coke's going to get me through this? So what I do with this is I'll mount one here. And then I'll mount the other one here. And I shove them together and just pressure fit them. And that way I can turn it and get the outside profile that I want. And then I separate them and turn the insides. So, ready to start?
Can we put that down? Because a lot of us are getting nervous.
I was hoping it'd fall and the club would buy it, but that's not going to happen. Well, that'll make a down payment. People do that at shows too. I guess I'm a little more comfortable with it than I should be then. Okay, I keep my watch on. I don't know why, but you can, I should pass this around. You can look at it and tell how many times it's been hit by the edge of a bowl. So I think, well, that could have been my arm, so I'm going to keep that watch on. Yeah. Okay, so
No, and if you do, you won't get an image out of the camera. Oh, no, okay, because we had it in here earlier without the lights on. Yeah. Really dark in the camera, you barely see it.
So I have a question for the group here. How fast would you turn this to while it's rough?
Probably 1,500, 1,800.
23.
Wow.
Wow.
I thought I was turning it fast at 1,000, 1,100, 1,200 RPMs, but
That's standing still.
Yeah.
okay. How fast do you turn when you're sanding on the lathe?
About 280.
I never go more than 1,200.
To turn? That's
I'll turn up 2,000.
Or it takes them a month to do it all.
I thought it took 2 years to do that one, but that's, I'm just curious because I'm completely self-taught. I tell people I went to school for this. I went to YouTube University, and that's how I learned to do a lot of this. But so I don't really know what the right speed is. I know I've seen formulas that say this times that is the number of.
You want to be between 6,000 and 9,000.
So, like I say, but
The thing I've heard that's best is the speed you're comfortable with.
exactly, and that's what I do. I'm comfortable with 1,200. That's probably 1,300 is the fastest I've ever turned. So they stay sharper when you turn faster.
No, I said, I think my tools cut better when I turn back.
You know, that's true, and maybe I should increase the speed of turn at, but
Yeah, you're comfortable.
I'm comfortable with where it's at.
Spence had one speed on his blade, full tilt.
Okay, so,
Yes.
well, that's another thing, and a lot of people, I'm sure, have the what's it called, the one-way turning jig. What's the name of it?
Oh, for sharpening?
Yeah, the Wolverine. I had that and I sold it, and I used the one it's called Kodiak. It's for me, it's what I do, the way I sharpen, it's much easier. I don't have that long pole for one thing. There's presets on it. There's 4 presets. One of them is a preset for the Irish grind, and that's what I use more than anything else. So that's what I use. But There's times I don't even turn it off, because especially when I'm turning, well, Purple Heart's hard, the Wingy's tough on wood. A lot of these woods, Murado, that's tough on the chisels too. So I just keep it running, and as soon as it slows down or I can tell it's not cutting right, I'll go ahead and resharpen. Okay, so like I said, I've never turned in front of people. This will be the first. Right, I assume you can still hear me, right? The first thing I do is like everybody does, whether it's a solid piece or segmented, knock the corners off. And I find that if I'm too aggressive on maple, it tends to chip. And this is the other. I tape this up behind my lathe, and it's got the profile, so it helps guide me so I don't get off the mark any. This is the top, this is the bottom. And you might be able to tell sometimes I get a little too aggressive, but Okay, so there's my rough profile. And I'll turn the ends. I'll separate these two parts and turn the inside. I don't really care to get a finished look on the outside yet, because I know I'm going to change it a little bit or touch it up when I get done with the inside. So then I'll take this one off. And then turn the inside of this one. You want to watch me turn the inside?
Main thing I have got is just all the information you've given us. Great.
So not going down. Could be.
Oh, that was not good.
And I'll use the negative rate scraper when I get ready to finish the outside. And for me, one of the best attachments I bought for the lathe is the swing away tailstock. That's okay, going to 1300. Starting to smell like a campfire. You can't see what I'm seeing here, and this is probably no secret, but I'm not watching the chisel. I'm watching where I'm cutting. So I'm cutting over here, but I'm looking over here. Okay, so I'm down to the bottom now. And this is where I'll use, I don't know if you're familiar with what's called the bottom of the bowl gouge. You can see the profile on it. It's got a double bevel. And that's a Glenn Lucas tool. So I like using that because does a better job when I try and go from the corner to the center of the bowl. And I'm not sure I'm gonna be able to do it because this rest is gonna be in the way, I think. Yeah, I really can't get the rest down low enough. Maybe I can. Nope, not gonna be able to do it. What's that? You thought it was gonna be perfect? So anyway, that's how I turn a piece like this. And then, like I said, I'll mount this one and do the same thing with it. Now, the hardest part for me is when I get the two sides turned is to get them to match up perfectly inside and out. And if anybody's got any real surefire tips for that, I'd love to hear them. Measuring it and making sure this is flat, doesn't always seem to work for me. I could, on some pieces, go in from the top and with a crook neck chisel and try and straighten it out, but I just never have. Maybe I should try that. The two halves, the inside and the outside, so that if you stick your hand down in that piece right there was one you could.
That's not the issue.
No.
The issue is getting the ID identical to both of them. So there's no step.
Right.
Yeah.
Measuring
Get the
it.
ID at both halves.
Right. I think what happens is that when I measure both halves, it's perfect. But then there's just enough wobble in the live center that's where the problem comes in. And this is the one-way live center. And I had so much trouble with that when I first bought it. It actually froze, wouldn't turn. And I called One Way, and it was just as COVID was starting. They said they'd call me back after COVID. Well, I haven't heard from them, but a wooden mallet and a little WD-40 and it works fine. I guess it still kind of wobbles a bit, but yeah. I really don't use that one very often. I'll use it for just gluing things together, but I have I hate to say it, a cheap Chinese made when I got off of Amazon that works better.
I have one if you want to try it.
I think I may have another one somewhere.
When I put mine together, that's what I had to go into the inside and smooth that joint out with a crook neck. That's the only way I can do it.
Instead of trying to cut the inside at an angle, if you would go in straight for maybe 1/4 inch on both pieces, they may line up better for you.
Oh, I got you. So just go in straight here instead of following the profile.
On both of them.
Right. Okay. I may try that. I saw somebody that did a real shallow mortise and tenon on it, a little mortise here and a little bit of a tenon there. That will work, but then my rings won't be the same size. So I would have to add maybe 1/4 inch to one ring if it's going to be the tenon.
Or you put a thin piece between them.
True. Yeah. So.
Too complicated.
Yeah. Well, it's a lot of this is complicated, and I like to do it as simply and easily and quickly as possible.
I being a one-piece turner, I get lost when you start making more than one piece out of. I just make the hole on top small enough so you can't get your damned hand in it and figure it out.
There's an idea. It might mess up the look, but I like that. I like the thought on that. So like I said, this is the shape of this is what the Native Americans call a seed storage jar. And like I said, I look at a lot of different cultures, I guess, to get designs and ideas. The amazing thing to me is the similarities between vases or clay pots that were made in Greece 4,000 years ago and what was made by the Hopis on First Mesa in the 1700s. And I finally figured out it's not that there was some cross-culture pollinization there. It's that just that like Malcolm Tibbet says, it's the form that's so pleasing. And a seed jar like this or like this, you'll find that in several different cultures. Even the Italians, although the Greeks put handles on them, the Italians put so many, decorated them so much that you can't even hardly look at them. But it's, if you're familiar with what's called the golden ratio, it's the relationship between height and weight and I guess depth too in some cases. 1.63 exactly. And so that's why I think it was utilitarian and pleasing to the eye, and that's why there's so much similarities in different cultures. Okay, is that enough turning? Good.
Great.
All right, any more questions?
Any more questions from anybody in the audience? Any more questions for David on the demo? So how about a round of applause for David?
Thank you. Ruth will be passing the hat too. Thank you.
I really enjoyed it myself, and I know that obvious that everybody in the crowd just loved your demo, David. So thank you very much. Thank to Ruth for helping out. That's wonderful.
Bye-bye.